It's excuse me, but it's 9 minutes past the hour. 8:09 p.m. here in the Salt Lake Valley. It's still about 100 degrees out there. Should be getting down to 80 degrees later tonight. That ain't much. Anyway, I wanted to hear this John Scofield interview. Thought you guys might enjoy listening to it with me. And let's get started.
Hey, everybody. It's my pleasure to have Mr. John Scofield on the show today. John, it is such an honor to meet you.
Oh, thanks, Rick. It's great to be here.
I'm such a massively big fan.
Oh, well, thank you.
I've been hanging out with John for the past hour or so and telling him this is the most difficult interview to prepare for because your discography is really vast. You've played with so many different people. You have so much different original music. Can you talk about that, about how you've done
I've been
this?
on a lot of records and stuff because I'm old, because I'm 70 now, and I've been in New York, on the jazz scene since 1974. And, our generation, especially me, I'm a little older than you, and guitar players, grew up with rock and roll and blues. And this whole thing was a big thing for me. And then at 18, I became a jazz snob, and that was it. But I had this early roots from age 12 on in rock and blues and just, the popular music of the 60s.
What grabbed your ear about jazz?
Part of it was like, if I wanted to be a professional musician, right? Mm-hmm. And I couldn't be like a rock guitar player. That was just like, I couldn't convince my parents that that's what I wanted to be. But jazz had like some cultural, weight. And more than that, it was, guitar music, right? I was really into it, and bluegrass was around, and blues and classical guitar. And then there was this other kind of guitar music that was jazz guitar. And so I had a guitar teacher who turned me on to that stuff when I was 14. Mainly it was completely related to the rock and blues that I liked. There'd be a guitar solo on a Beatles song or the Dave Clark Five or whatever stuff. And that was, okay, the guy's blowing there. And then the older musicians that I met said, yeah, there's this other kind of music that's like that, only better. And that's jazz, where they really do that a lot. And then I just got interested in it.
I was listening to Smokin' at the Half Note recently, Wes record. Yeah. And it occurred to me, the first tune, No Blues, that Wes takes like a 6-minute solo on there. That's unbelievably great.
One of the greatest solos.
One of the greatest solos ever.
Yeah.
Single notes, octaves, chords. Yeah. Was that a record that you?
Oh yeah, it was one of my first jazz records. And I grew up in a town called Wilton, Connecticut, and the town next to it there was a record store that had a jazz section, and I really lucked out because there was a woman who worked there named Sally. She was maybe she was 40 or something when I was 15, and she told me what to get, and she knew me because I would come in there all the time, and she told me to get Wes Montgomery and Jim Hall and Pat Martino, George Benson. And she told me to get those records. And she told me to get that record, which was a relatively new Wes record at the time. He had made it already with Windy and his hits. But it would have been just like a year before that had come out. Yeah. So yeah, I wore that out.
So what were some other records that what Jim Hall? So Jim Hall and Bill Evans?
Yeah, I had that one. The first one I had was Art Farmer live at the Half Note. Also, same club that Wes played at. And that's with Jim Hall and Steve Swallow and Walter Perkins on drums. So I had that record, and I fell in love with that as well as with the Wes Montgomery. My dad, who was not a musician, when I was 12 or something, had bought me a Django record.
Okay.
Because he read about Django in the New York Times and said, well, my kid likes guitar, maybe he'll like this. And I bought me Djangology. And, back then, kids, we only had a few records, and they cost $1 a piece. So you had to wait around to buy. You had to wait for your allowance to get another one. So, but I was so lucky that really the first jazz records I got were fantastic jazz.
Hey, Justin.
Hello. How are you?
Are you in the mood for some Scofield?
No, not really.
Did you ever have a Scofield Bible?
Yeah, I gave my main one away to some homeless guy a long time ago. But I got another one, actually. The only thing I wrote in that one, though, was I remember going through it, and if I ever gave it to someone, I figured I'll just put down I think I fixed the word hell in it since it has the King James shit in it. But nowadays, I'd feel wicked to hand someone a King James Bible. So, I would never hand it to someone. But that was before I realized how excessively bad it was. Like, I knew it was bad, but
It was good for me.
no, I didn't mean the notes. I meant the translation.
Oh, well, I remember when I got a Scofield Bible about 1972, 73. It was really good for me. Because it was like, here's a bunch of new thoughts
Right.
that's not popular in evangelical fundamentalism.
I could give you a interesting new thought that'd probably be in line with some of the stuff Scofield probably believes to some degree. Some of it. I'm starting to think, or I'm not just starting. I'm very convinced that Paul and the other apostles were teaching the same thing. Hear me out. What does John say? He said, for example, in Romans, Paul talks a lot about justification, right? But everyone reads it kind of focusing on the first chapters, but they don't focus on what's after it. That Paul's argument is that if God has justified us now, he will do these other things for us too. He compare, the whole bullshit about two natures. In fact, Knock wrote a book against that. Two natures.
Mm-hmm.
In Romans 7, for example, that's one of the passages they've used to kind of make stuff up out of it, but they've kind of just blended a bunch of ideas together. Romans 7, if you look closely, he's not arguing that that's how he is now, that he's under the law of sin now. No, if you read on to the next chapter, his argument is that a lost man is under the law of sin, that a lost man has, when he was under law, he had nothing to go by, right? That he's just stuck. He's stuck like under law, he wants to do good, right? We have a lot of people who want to do good, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, who would want to do bad? That doesn't even make any sense. But he finds another law in his members that while his mind wanted to do good, he did bad.
Mm-hmm.
And it explains in Romans 8 that now the just requirement of the law is being fulfilled in those who Christ is in.
Yeah.
And so, of course, the law, in the same way in the Old Testament, that it's not about, a little tiddly here and this, that, Remember the guy who was stoned for picking up sticks on the Sabbath?
Mm-hmm.
Think about it. Why was he stoned for picking up sticks on the Sabbath? Was it because he was picking up sticks on the Sabbath, or was it because his heart was playing games with God? See, what is picking up sticks doing? He's like testing the boundaries. He's showing his disrespect for God. But what does Jesus say? Jesus says, if you had someone, your ram or whatever, right, your sheep in a pit, would you not help him out? It's not that we're under the Sabbath right now, but you see it's all about the heart. The guy picking up sticks was testing God. The guy getting his ram out of the ditch was doing what is love.
Mm-hmm.
And so what does John say in the same stuff that Paul is saying? He says that the one who is doing just is just. It's not because he's doing just to be justified. We know that and Paul, John, Peter all agree that no one is justified out of law. No one's justified. No one's justified out of their faith either, but they're justified out of Jesus Christ's faith.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, what is doing faith? You're doing just, right? You're doing just by doing faith. You're doing just by, many things, right? Well, you're doing just because you are just, not because you're getting just by it. If God has justified you, you are doing just.
Makes
And
sense to
so,
me.
yeah, there's a the more you look at it, like, and same thing with James, right? Like, he makes that same argument. When we realize that faith is a work within and of itself, just like everything else that happens in the relative scheme of, if it's not up to God, then you're establishing your own righteousness, right? That if you don't believe the placer is placer, if you don't like Romans 9 and the fact that that teaching is all over the Bible, it's just like expounded a little bit a different way in Romans 9 and a little bit here and a little bit there. It's in God's very name. If you don't like that God is the placer, you're establishing your own righteousness because you don't believe in one God. It wasn't up to God, it was up to you.
Mm-hmm.
And so oh my gosh, the deity of God is everything in every sense. And so and there's also, like, there's other stuff I've noticed that gets all messed up too. Where Paul says, I've recharted everything, and I think the snatching and all this stuff is all what's going on. This was taught in Daniel, but what's the secret is kind of in line with what what was it called? What that if you're alive and remain, that it will still affect you. Let me show you this new chart I made. And Scofield likes charts, right? Well, look at this chart. Yeah. In fact, that's the one thing he always got, he always got scolded for because he liked his little paintings or whatever. But I mean, to some degree, like, you got to know that it's not about the chart as much as it's about, let's see if we can put things together here, right? It's not about the painting. Let's see here. How do I?
Let's get back to the Scofield guy for a little bit, and then we'll come back to you with your chart.
Yeah, this is a really
John
good
Scofield.
one. Oh, that's Scofield?
This is John Scofield, yeah. The jazz guitar player, not the
Oh, I was like, what?
Guitar records, and I got a Miles record, and I got a John Coltrane record. I even got an Ornette Coleman record. I didn't know they were playing free. I just liked the sound of the songs, And these were like the first 10 jazz records I had. It turns out were all classics.
Now, how did you go from that to actually learning about the language and learning chords?
It took
and things
forever.
Like that?
I must have wanted it so bad because I didn't know any kids who played jazz. You know, the coolest kids I knew were the kids in my rock band that I could get to go to hear Muddy Waters and B.B. King and stuff. Nobody actually could play any jazz in my high school.
And let me say also that this allows a lot more mercy in other things too, because when you realize this, it brings in some of these sayings that help us understand love and just and being just, because there's a lot to understand, right? But there's certainly foundational things as well. Like I wouldn't, like, you find the salvation of all in John, you find it in John's epistles, you find it in Peter's epistles. These are foundational ideas, but and as much as the other ideas, I've been a little bit, and because I was trying to be faithful in the matter, but when you think about what John said, the one who is doing just is just. Well, someone who's doing what part of what are some of his precepts that we're said to be keeping? Well, to be believing in Christ, and his son and Jesus, right? That these are not empty names, just like saying the word cross is not an empty idea. And also, but to see the one who's like, I mean, come on, would any of us say that Martin Zender is doing unjust, or this guy is doing? You can, like, it helps understand, like, could anyone ever say that Knock, for example, was doing unjust? The one who's doing unjust is not of God. Knock couldn't have been any further from doing unjust, whether or not he missed some things. And so do you see that if you're doing just because you are just, not because you're getting just from it. You see that? Isn't that's the same thing Paul teaches in Romans, if we didn't stop at chapter 5 so often. Yeah. It's cool. It's cool.
And now,
my name's Justin.
Scheduled Scofield.
Right.
Not one kid that I know of. And I knew Dave Brubeck's kids
Okay.
because they lived in Wilton too.
Wow.
And they could probably play jazz, but they went away to private school, so I didn't hang with them that much. But I met them, but we played blues and rock and roll together. They were into that, you know. But I had this one guitar teacher named with Alan Dean, and he was a bebop wannabe, you know, who was learning himself and could already play. And would go into he was doing club dates around in Connecticut and weddings and bar mitzvahs or whatever, and rock and roll too. I'll never forget. He said, "Yeah, I integrated a bowling alley with Freddie King in Florida."
Wow.
Which I was like, wow, what a life this guy had. But he was into jazz, and he got me going on Pal Farlow and all. So I had these records. I didn't know how to play, and he could kind of play, but I'm not sure how good he was, really. Bless him. And he just like wrote out how high the moon, the chords, and then he gave me a scale for each. He said, "You play the scale," and that didn't give me anything. It was like, what? So there was a long process of basically learning to play jazz by ear, but also knowing the theory and learning about scales and chords and the construction of music.
And did you start transcribing solos? Would you listen to these solos, Jim Hall solos?
Yeah, I would transcribe licks, you know. And but I didn't have anybody to play with. And then I met one kid who was from Connecticut who knew more about jazz than I did. And he played guitar. He was mainly a kind of a blues guy, but he wanted to learn jazz too. And he could play a major seventh chord, you know, and we were both stumbling in the dark together. And by now it's my senior year of high school. And you know, kids today, by their senior year of high school, can play giant steps and stuff, but not us. I remember there was a stage band, a high school stage band. The music teacher who taught the band didn't know anything about jazz. He was a nice guy. And the guitar part for some of those bassy tunes, I had to learn Little Darling. And every one is a chord. Right? And so that was so hard, you know. And so gradually you're learning.
You start to learn vocabulary like that.
Trying to learn. And then, you know, I had jazz disease and would go. I was already going into the city to hear groups at the Vanguard at the Gate, and not being able to play at all, and being there in New York City, my God, and hearing the greats. You know, heard Monk and Bill Evans and great stuff, and Jimi Hendrix and Jeff Beck, and the smoke and rock and roll at the Fillmore East. Yeah.
Wow. Does it seem like another lifetime at this point?
Yeah, it does at this point, because it was 50 plus years ago.
Yeah.
And at the same time, it was the same old grimy world that we all live in, of going to a theater and having this band up there cranking it, you know, just like they do now, don't they?
That's fascinating, actually, that to think of it in that way, that it's no different in some ways going out to see a group.
You know, here we are with an amplifier and an electric guitar, and then you get a drummer and a bass player that plays the low notes, and you just whack at it. And that's what Jimi Hendrix was doing, and Jeff Beck. They were just really good at it.
Right.
And another group that played around the tri-state area, the Vagrants.
Okay.
Which was Leslie West and the Vagrants.
Yeah.
And Leslie was really killing. I wanted to play soul music too, you know. So the Rascals came to Wilton, my town, and played like one of their first gigs after their album came out, or their single came out, in my high school. And I don't know how they came there. Their first single had come out, and my friend was in the audiovisual department, kid, and he taped it on a Wallensack tape recorder. And I would go to his house. He wouldn't let me, you know, I had no idea how to copy a tape.
Right, of course.
So I would listen to this recording of the Rascals live at Wilton High School. I wish I had the recording. It was good. They were killing. You know, I played Midnight Hour and Slow Down, and they were, you know, soulful. And then, you know, all the Motown records and blues. I was a junior blues wannabe. B.B. King and Muddy Waters and Howlin' Wolf were playing, you know, suburban white gigs at that point. You know,
but were you out playing with? Would you go out and play blues gigs, or would you go?
I would play anything,
any kind of gig,
anything. And we had I started playing in a band with kids when I was 12, and we played all the time until I was 16, and became a music snob and couldn't find anybody to play with, because I wanted to play, you know, I don't know, My Favorite Things or something like that I couldn't really play. You know, but these guys,
so how did you go from that to actually being?
I went to Berkeley.
You know what this reminds me of? I had a dream the other night, not about you playing a guitar, actually. That was a dream from a few years ago. But I had a dream the other night that you were working at the car mechanic place down the road, and everyone was wondering, like, where you kept disappearing to. And I thought, I got the idea in that dream that you were walking all the way from Utah to the car mechanic place down the road here. And I was like, man, how's he walk all the way here And because I always walk past that place when I'm walking, like, and so for some reason, I got the idea that you walk here to work at the car mechanic place, and everyone there thought you were like a mysterious person for some reason. Anyway,
That's funny.
You went to
I
Berkeley.
went
throughout
to
this
Berkeley,
video, I got
and
so much to share. It's so cool about the second death too.
All
The
right.
second
Well,
death. The second death.
cool your heels. We're almost there.
pretty crappy.
Okay.
My first year.
All right.
At Berkeley, and all of a sudden I was around kids who could play and teachers that could play. I just practiced all the time. Went for it, you know.
So you would
crazy.
study this stuff in school, and you'd have classes, and you'd talk
I'd have the
about harmony.
classes, but mainly, yeah, and I was trying to absorb that.
And you'd be playing with
but
other
mainly, I
students?
just listen to records, play with the other kids, like, oh, what are the chords to a blues? And oh, there's a 2/5, and you know, you can put this other 2/5 in there, and you know, it's basically the same thing I'm doing now.
Right.
You know, I don't see a huge difference, except for I'm much better at it, and I've developed a vocabulary.
Your playing style resonates with young people. Why do you think that is?
Blues. I think it's because I started with blues guitar and wanted to bend notes and play with vibrato. That's why.
I mean, you really have blended those two different styles together, the rock and blues with playing over changes.
Not just me. All the the people that came before me, like John Abercrombie and Mick Goodrick, who was playing with light strings, incredible guitar. John McLaughlin, all these, all kind of Coriel, all these different versions of jazz and rock. You know, my version might be a little more blues centric because I really was a blues kid who wanted to play blues.
You have a new record out,
Mm-hmm.
and the first track that was released, Honest I Do, is from the Grace Under Pressure record, which was recorded here in this.
That's right, it was.
In this building. Charlie Hayden's on it, Bill Frisell, and Joey Barron, I think, plays drums on it.
Joey played drums.
I went back and I listened to that recording. I hadn't listened to it in a long time. Charlie Hayden, for example, playing on that tune and on that record, it just evokes this certain vibe. And then
his weight to his playing of that bass. Wow.
Yeah. Now, when you would
so
record
strong.
records like that back then, Grace Under Pressure, for example, are you doing live takes in these rooms?
It was all
Are you in
live.
ISO booth,
It was all live. I don't think we overdubbed it much.
Would you rehearse and then come in?
We would have one rehearsal.
Okay.
And I would write these tunes. And this was all the records I made then in the 90s.
Okay.
And in the 80s, pretty much. But those jazz records with Charlie and stuff, you could only get them for one rehearsal. Charlie was the biggest name. And actually that record was supposed to be with Pat Metheny.
Okay.
And Pat and I had been friends for years, and I was a fan of his music. And we were going to do it. I started to write the music for it. And then I got Charlie on board. He wanted to do it. And we decided to get Joey on drums. Joey Barron was my old friend from Berkeley. We had gone to school together. And then Pat pulled out because he couldn't do it. Something came up, and he said, listen, I'll do it, but just not this year. And then we ended up recording another record 2 years later. Mm-hmm. So I got Frisell, who was already making a huge name for himself in music and had been doing all kinds of cool stuff. And I was lucky to get Bill, and I'm so glad that we had already played with Bass Desires, that group of Mark Johnson.
Yeah.
But that music is done in the just live way. I mean, we would maybe put the drums in there in that booth. Bass would be in there.
Okay.
And the two guitars would be out here
and
with some
with headphones on.
We all have headphones on.
Okay.
And get a great engineer and a great sound in these rooms right here at the power station.
I mean, literally right here, though.
Literally, we are at the power station where
because I went and looked at John's discography and how many you did a lot of records here.
Yeah, all of them in the 90s for sure.
That's how I knew that you'd know how to get here.
Yeah, 53rd Street between 9th and 10th. Yeah, it's still here.
Okay, so you're in. I'm fascinated by this kind of thing. Mm-hmm. You're in here. You've done a rehearsal the day before. Mm-hmm. It's a recording date. Mm-hmm. What time do you get here to the studio with jazzers? Did they come later?
Yeah, we couldn't start that early probably, but I always wanted to start. We probably started, with a setup. The engineers would get here earlier, and we wouldn't start till 11.
Now, are you excited? It's your date. It's your music.
I'm at 7:30. I'm somewhere working, practicing.
Okay.
And then would get here earlier to make sure that the stuff is okay.
So if you had music stands, everybody's parts are on the music stands and everything.
Yeah, I copied out the parts myself.
Right.
And there were lead sheets, and I had gotten the lead sheet method from Gary Burton.
Okay.
Who showed me that at Berkeley, and it's a double stave with treble clef and bass clef. if there's no written bass part, which there would be some, it would be chord symbols down there and the melody on the top stave. And I would do that, and I would Xerox them, copy.
And if there would be kicks or something, you would put those in, right? If there was like an upbeat kick on something, if there's something that needed to.
Really, with a drummer, I just gave him the lead sheet.
Okay.
And then they would
know. They look at the melody.
and I would make a suggestion. Oh, maybe hit that, or you don't have to hit that. But a lot of times, the longer I did it, the more I realized if you get these great musicians, don't tell them anything.
Okay, so you do a take of a song.
Yeah.
Would you go in and listen to it, or would you say, let's do one more take?
A lot of times we do one more take. Earlier in my career, we would listen to everything. And then I realized that was actually getting in the way of my own performance. That I'd get too self-conscious.
Yeah.
And I started to doubt myself. So now I like to hardly listen at all, because the other trick is to get a really great engineer who you trust. And on those records, we had James Farber or Joe Furla, two of the greatest engineers in jazz. And they made it sound better than whatever I would suggest to them. I don't even know what kind of mics I used on my amps and stuff.
Well, I always would say that the best rock records in the 80s, the best rock drum sounds were on your records and not on any other rock record, because they'd be using these terrible samples that would be 30 milliseconds late. And you'd have Dennis Chambers hitting perfect rim shots every time. And
well, when I met Dennis, that was something else.
Yeah.
And you want me to tell you about how that came together?
Yeah.
So I played, as you know, in Miles Davis's band, which was a very electric Miles fusion music.
Yes.
And his own version of fusion that he invented.
Yep.
I was in that band for a few years, and at one point, Daryl Jones, the bassist, we were listening to a cassette of P-Funk live. It was the P-Funk All-Stars. And he said, this is really cool because there's only one drummer in this version of P-Funk. Usually P-Funk had 3 drummers or something. And it was like there were two 90-minute cassettes that we would listen to, which was this huge long concert with this one guy it was great drumming. And I remember listening to that over and over again with Daryl. And then I met Gary Granger, the bassist. I met him through Mark Copeland, who was a jazz pianist. And he said, listen, if you're going to do funk like Miles kind of band or whatever, you should try my friend from Baltimore, who's this guy. He doesn't read music, but doesn't matter because he can play anything. And so I met Gary, who could. I taught him all those tunes, like just played him through a couple of times, and he had this photographic memory and learned it all perfectly. And then Gary said, we played with Mark on piano and some different drummers and really good drummers. And Gary said, you ought to meet this guy who I grew up with. And so I met Dennis, and Dennis was a drummer from that piece.
So as you're listening to this, brothers and sisters, imagine what he's saying at how music is progressing, or these musicians are progressing in their understanding and style and performance. Now imagine the body of Christ coming together just like this. Because it's not one person. It's not A. Enoch. It's everybody who, let's say A. Enoch is the Miles Davis. And everybody is playing off of him, off of the standards he lays down. So the body of Christ, as Paul says in Ephesians, blesses itself, builds itself up in the body. Anyway.
Can you hear me?
There's a lot of similarities going on in what John Scofield is saying and our experience in trying to understand God and God's word.
Can you hear
Fun
me?
tape that I've been listening to.
Oh my God.
Go ahead.
Oh, I just want to know because I'm actually really far away, and I guess this mic has Bluetooth. And I'm making eggs while I listen.
Okay, good.
Not even close to the monitor.
Okay.
And Dennis wanted to get into playing jazz music. He'd been in P-Funk for years, since he was a teenager. He knew about me from jazz, so we started, I was lucky I had this incredible rhythm section that just came together.
That was an amazing rhythm section. And you did, so Dennis is on that, and then Loud Jazz, on Blue Matter and Loud Jazz.
Yeah, the record before that is called Still Warm.
Yep.
And that was when I was still with Miles, and Daryl played bass.
Yep.
And we got Don Goralnik on keyboards, the late Don Goralnik, who was a friend from New York who I had met, and one of the great session and jazz players around, and Omar Hakim, who was slamming at that time with Weather Report.
Yeah.
And this was right when Omar and Daryl went with Sting.
With Sting, yeah.
And we made a
Blue
record,
Turtles,
Still Warm. Yeah. So I had, Miles really got me into playing with a funk R&B rhythm section. I was going all bebop before that for a while.
Well, you started,
I started with Cobham.
but with Miles, it was Star People, and
Yeah.
Stern was on that record
That's
as well.
right. Two guitars.
Two guitars, and then Decoy, I think, was after that. Or
Star
which of
People,
the-
then Decoy. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then You're Under Arrest.
You're Under
another-
Arrest. Yeah. Al Foster. Well,
Al
Marcus
Foster.
Miller played on Decoy, I think, right? Or was it Daryl?
I think it was Daryl.
Daryl.
He Marcus was on Star People.
On Star People. Yeah.
So when I first joined the band, it was Al and Marcus and Mike, who was my buddy. We were hanging all the time. I was around New York, and Mike had moved to the city, had this apartment above a bar in Lower Manhattan on Grand Street. And he convinced the bar owner to have music, and it became this great Den of Iniquity scene where we would play all night, and Jocko was hanging out. It was crazy. And but Mike was my pal, and he got the gig with Miles. And then after he'd been with Miles for it was a while, because they made that first record.
That's right.
Miles's comeback record. And then at one point, Miles wanted to get two guitars, so his saxophone player, Bill Evans, who was my pal, got me on the band.
Now, you made records you made the John Abercrombie duo record. You made a duo record with Pat Metheny. You played Bill Frisell played the record. You make records with other guitar players.
I
think
like
that's
it.
really
Yeah,
cool.
it's a great combination, as we know. And it can also be the worst combination in the world if people don't listen to each other. With those people you just mentioned, it's a blast.
You also like the sound of organ and guitar.
Yeah, I really do.
Right? Larry Goldings and John Medeski playing organ.
Yeah.
Now, did Wes's records with the Organ Trio records have any influence in that, or you just like the sound of organ and guitar?
I knew about, as a kid in our band, we had an organ. It was a Farfisa. This is when I'm actually in the very beginning, there was a small Hammond organ this kid had, and it was like the smallest
M3
Hammond,
or something.
M3,
yeah, it's like 40.
We dragged that
key.
around. I mean, organ was it in rock and roll too,
Yeah.
and or the strange soul music we were trying to play.
Right.
And at age 13, and then the other kid got a Farfisa, and then he had a Leslie speaker with the Farfisa because it fell off the truck or something. I don't know. Somehow I don't know how they got this thing. And so organ was always something I was really used to, and I loved the sound. And piano and guitar actually are very similar, especially when they're recording. They can kind of get a little too close.
Yeah.
Organ, that's never a problem. Organ is just this, big pad of wonderfulness. No matter what.
Pads or the stabs too.
Yeah, and it's so percussive.
Pick one record that you love your guitar sound on. Is there one record that you said, "Wow, man, we really captured that"?
Well, I'll tell you, there's a lot that I don't like the guitar sound on, because I've never been really good at getting a guitar sound compared to some people, and I've always been too impatient. And a lot of the records in the 80s I played with chorus on all the time, and that just masks everything. And I was kind of a chorus addict, and then I went to Chorus Anonymous, and I realized I had to stop. It worked. I haven't had stereo chorus. I actually have a chorus pedal that I still turn on for like an effect. But and that kind of was a period. But what record do I really like the guitar sound on? I mean, the last, I would say, 5 records I've made, I like the guitar sound. And I'm also getting deafer as I get older. So maybe I'm just putting up with it.
I noticed that when you play more straight ahead tunes, that you don't use as much gain on your guitar. And then when you play songs that are more groove oriented, that you'll use more gain.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that
exactly.
do you find that the sound, I mean, obviously the sound influences what you play, but how important is that?
Sound is probably everything, and you just it's really about turning the guitar down a little bit to get the clarity on the, on the chordal stuff. And then, just turn it up and have your amp set so that it'll break up. And I used to use distortion pedals. I used to use a Rat all the time. And lately I've just been going through a Vox or a Deluxe Reverb a lot and having it loud enough so that there's distortion on the amp. And it's always, so I have made records where I've gone back after and said, it's a little too much hair on there, And then other ones where it's like, that's just completely clean. That's got no funk. And but I'm always tweaking. And a lot of it's on the guitar too.
Your use of space in your soloing, and this is a thing I love about your playing, is the rhythmic ideas that you develop and how you use space. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I didn't always use space. I mean, like everybody, I'm trying to learn bebop and try to play all the changes, and play those long lines. And for me, anyway, it's a big mistake to just always try to play long lines. Okay, so I had so many solos where my shit wasn't working, and then I would listen to records by my favorite players, you know, and they played with space, and people talk about space, you know. And when I met Miles and started to play with him, he just said it the greatest way. He said, "Man, just play with space. You got to play with space. Play with space, will you?" And he just told me to play with space. I said, "Yes, sir." And he's right. And I have to remind myself all the
Would
time.
he literally say that?
Oh yeah, space. You're not playing with space. You know, come on. And the thing is, with guitar, we don't have to breathe, do we?
Right.
And with a trumpet, he has to play with space.
Yeah.
You know, and it sounds better. And something happens when you stop and leave some air in there, and the whole band comes into focus for the listener and for you.
Yeah.
And you're able to come back in more in sync with the group. So I have to.
Can you hear a spiritual lesson in that, brothers and sisters? Instead of overwhelming someone with 20 minutes of space is important. The silence of God is important. The
Have
cloud
you
of
read that?
unknowing. What?
The sound. Oh, I was saying, have you read that book, Sounds of God, by Robinson?
No, I have not.
It's pretty good.
Always remind myself, and it's kind of a weird rule that I have, and I forget sometimes, and because I'm working on stuff just like everybody, and I'm just hammering out those eighth notes, and you have to stop doing that. You know,
The interactive nature of playing jazz, or the listening between people, the interaction that happens live that you don't get when you do overdubs. Do you feel that doing overdubs makes music, takes the immediacy away from it?
Well, it sure cuts down on the interplay.
It does, right?
And interplay it turns out is really important.
Oh, let me. Can
You know, overdubs are here to stay. You know, because we can, and people will use that. But it's just something about when you two human beings come together, or three or four or 8 or 40, and find a way to play together that is, the sum is greater than the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. And I really learned this from playing with really good players, where I would play and I'd be frustrated. And then I would listen to how they were playing. They were really listening to each other, you know, and all of a sudden these things would happen. It was just they're playing together. It makes it better than some hot solo, you know. It's not about that. And that's what I love about the jazz world that I'm in, and the way people play together. And it's more important to me now than ever. And I really had to learn it, because I know some younger guys that just play like that. They somehow they know that. And I've learned a lot from guys that are like Bill Stewart, the drummer, 10 years younger than me. I remember playing with him and playing with Bill Frisell too, a long time ago. I mean, I would be playing all my shit, and then Bill would just play a couple of notes, and it would sound so good. I was like, how is that, you know? And Bill Stewart, he just listened to everything and made the band sound good. And when I would play with Miles, when Miles would play, you know, we'd all be playing our stuff, and we'd be whatever it was, you know, it's okay. And then he would start to play, and everything just came together. And he was able to just put it right in there, you know.
Right.
And so then the space in between we knew what to play in the space, because he had just put it right in there, you know. And there's nothing like that jazz thing, you know. When I got to play with those guys, I don't know if I'm sure it comes through on record, you know, but it's been my experience through these wonderful musicians I've played with, that I've learned more about music, and then can go back and appreciate the older music, and appreciate playing with other people, you know, because that's really the jazz thing is just playing together. You know, we go out and play gigs. Luckily, we're able to do that. It's not even so much about making records, really. You know, when the band comes together and you have a good night, there's nothing like it.
I heard an interview where you talked about having developing a good internal pulse and working with a metronome, but it's really important to have good internal pulse.
Yeah.
A lot of kids only play with drum machines, so they don't give it experience actually playing with other people, playing with a drummer, or just playing in ensembles. How important is that ensemble playing to developing your time?
Well, you know, the thing is, playing with a metronome or with a drum machine is, you can, and I do that too, you know, in order to see if I'm slowing down or speeding up, you know, and that will tell you. But then you start to rely on that. And the idea would be to sit down and groove by yourself. And the really good musicians that I've met can do that. Like, holy shit, that's a whole band. They might just be playing the bass part, or maybe some little guitar chinks or whatever. But if it has that rhythmic momentum, and they can do that, that comes from inside us, you know. And I just wanted to get to that. And hopefully, I mean, I'm working on it. And I don't say that with false modesty, because I didn't have that. You know, I was just learning. I didn't know anything about that. I liked that rhythmic music that I would listen to. Right, so I didn't even know what it was. I just loved it. You keep working on it. And I remember this one Sonny Rollins interview which is on YouTube from Black and White from years ago, Ralph J. Gleason, where they said, "What's the most important part of your music?" And he thought about it, and he said, "The rhythm." And Sonny is as melodic as you can get, I think. You know, talk about lines, talk about melodies and harmony and all that. He's a master, but he saw rhythm as paramount, you know, and I gotta agree.
What do you like about certain songs? For example, on your new record, you played that song "Coral," which is a Keith Jarrett song, and although I don't know of a Keith Jarrett recording of that, was that something that Gary?
Yeah, I got that from Gary, but they recorded it on the record that Gary and
the duo record they did.
They made a record together.
Yeah.
And that's where when I went to Berkeley, and the first year Gary Burton wasn't there. The second year Gary came to teach, and I was so surprised because I was a Gary Burton fan. I'd gone to hear him at the top of the gate and at a Newport Jazz Festival. Why is this superstar coming here to Berkeley? But anyway, I was just really lucky because my roommate, Ted Siebes, was an excellent drummer as a kid. He was my age, but he already could really play. And our other roommate was really good too, Chip Jackson, the bass player. We lived together, drums, bass, guitar, right across the street from school. And the drummer, Ted, had a vibraphone in his room.
Oh my God.
And Gary heard this drummer, Ted, who was really good, and started to come over and jam with us his first year at school. And we played with Gary just countless times in our little student apartment, and was so lucky to do that. And Gary brought with him his repertoire, you know, from the Gary Burton Band. And one of the tunes was Coral. And all those Chick Corea tunes, all Swallows tunes, Mike Gibbs, all those tunes that are probably that make up the real book. You know, this is before there was a real book. A lot of those lead sheets were just stuff that Gary gave to the students. And Coral's one of those tunes.
John, when you pick up your guitar for the first time each day, what's something that you play? Do you practice anything? What do you work on?
I practice. If I don't practice, I'm screwed.
Okay.
I mean, I pretty much.
Do you play tunes, or do you actually practice things?
I play tunes, and then I practice the stuff that I can't play.
Okay, what would that be?
I wish I could be a fast flat picker, you know, and I'm not very good with my right hand. So lately I've been trying to get a little bit better at that. I don't think I'll ever really burn, you know, but I practice tunes. I practice the music that I'm going to play. So luckily I have enough projects and gigs that I've got music to work. I mean, last year I played all these duets, did a tour with Dave Holland in duo, and Dave writes some challenging music, so I had plenty to practice there. I'm going to play with him next week, so I have to start practicing those tunes again. I want to have a band or whatever, and I've got to put some music together. What are we going to play? Write some tunes, find some tunes, whatever. So I'm always practicing what we're going to play.
Do you tend to write things only when you're thinking about making a record?
Yeah, pretty much.
Right? Yeah. You never wake up and say, I'm going to write a song. Oh, I have an idea for a song today. Or is that sometimes once in a great while that happens, or never?
I wish that would happen. I can't remember that ever happening now, you know.
You have so much music. You've written so much music, but you write them. You come up with an album concept and you write music.
Yeah, I write music. We need a fast tune, a slow tune. I just
thought I'd tell you, in my experience as a copywriter in the advertising world, the deadline was the pressure to write. I mean, if you promised it in 3 months, I probably wouldn't work on it for 2.5 months. And then I'd do the most work on the night before it was due. It's the pressure that leads to the creativity.
And Steve Swallow has been my big, teacher about writing music. And basically, he just said, you put in the work, you'll get something. You know, if you put in the time, and it's not fun to compose until you get something that you like, you know, and then it's the most fun. But all that other time, it's just like, oh, I can't, this sucks, you know. And so I'll write 2 bars that seem good to me or something, and I'll write it out. I now use my iPhone to record myself improvising more, and then I'll find something that I like through an improvisation. And it's, okay, that's the beginning of something. Then I have to put something to go with it, and that takes forever. And then there you go. And you put in the time, you'll get something.
Now you have this solo record, but it's really a solo record. You have overdubs. Were you playing your company yourself?
Yeah, it's not overdubs. It's my looper pedal.
It's your looper pedal.
It's a Boomerang Phrase Sampler Plus. That's the model. And
so you'll go through and you'll play through the
play the change, then play along with them.
Yeah.
And
you go out and do gigs like that, right?
Yeah. And I have all kinds of ways to try to cover it up so it's not so much like the busker, you know, on the corner who's playing Stairway to Heaven and, you know, and stacks up 7 parts and it's this huge, big, wonderful thing, which you can do now.
Yeah.
You know? I find tunes that just have a couple of changes and play that. And then and I go backwards. I can push the backwards pedal, push the slow part or make it go twice as fast. And I try to make sometimes the accompaniment sound somewhat interesting,
Right.
so that can be part of a concert. So it's not like, oh, now he's making the loop, and then play along with it, and then turn it off and just play by myself. And it really has helped me to do solo gigs, because Joe Pass virtuoso, forget it. That's not going to happen. Segovia, I am not, and when I got this looper, which has been years ago now, I've had so much fun with it that it's allowed me to play solo gigs.
Like, if you're going to put on some music to listen to for enjoyment, what do you listen to?
Well, I don't like music, Rick. I don't listen to music. No, I do. I love music. I still study the masters. I do. I listen to the same artists that we all know. Bird and Bud and Bill and the jazz greats and Miles and Train. And I've gone back to listen to a lot of the older guys. Lester Young and this stuff is something I really love, and Duke and there's so much stuff, and I'm a jazz nerd,
Yeah.
But then I get up there and I'm bending the shit out of strings and playing loud as hell, because there's something about that music.
Because you're playing the guitar, right?
Yeah, I play guitar, and there's nothing like that beat. That beat
Right.
that came about in our time, boom, back, boom, 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 that sort of thing. There's just nothing like it. So I go home and I just listen to, all kinds of jazz, and then something happens when I just get away from that.
You've played with so many people. Who didn't you play with that you wish you would have played with?
Well, there's, what is really interesting to me is when you get to play with people a bunch and work on a music and develop as a group. That's what's interesting to me. I've also, played on all these records where it was a one shot with, some really famous guys, and that was wonderful and is wonderful. But I don't think, oh my God, if I could just get with this guy, it would make my life. I'm not at that point now. I just want to play with the same good musicians and work on some music and develop a band sound. And that's what I love to do. I'm starting to do it with a new group with Josh Dion on drums, John Coward on keyboards, Vicente Archer on acoustic bass. And we've got a big tour coming up, and I wrote some new music. We're covering some stuff, and it's just so much fun to see how it goes every night. I'm lucky enough to get out there and play gigs and see the music develop that way.
When I interviewed Ron Carter, I asked him if he ever saw the 50s quintet, and he said a couple times.
Really?
But he never played with John Coltrane.
Yeah. Wow.
And he said that he was busy with Miles when Coltrane was out playing, and he never played with him.
He never did. I would have thought they would have.
Yeah.
From that era. Yeah. Wow.
Is there anyone that you wish you would have seen play?
Man, I wish I had seen the 50s quintet, and I wish I'd seen Coltrane. I didn't see Coltrane. Wish I'd seen Charlie Parker and Bud Powell. And
some of them you wouldn't have had a chance to see.
Right. Well, I wasn't alive,
right?
Or I was 3.
Right.
Funny story. There's this drummer I know who's maybe 2 years older than me, and one time we were talking, and I said, man, I wish I could have heard Bird. And he goes, oh yeah, I heard Bird. And I'm like, Charlie Parker. And he's like, oh yeah, no, I heard a couple times. And I'm like, what? And he's from New York.
Okay.
And I think it was his aunt was, he told me, was a vocal coach and around the scene in New York, and knew a lot of musicians, and brought him as a little child to 52nd Street to hear Bird, and introduced him to Bird. And he was this little kid. He goes, Bird, oh, I like it. He thought, it really impressed. Steve Swallow, my buddy and mentor, when he was a kid in New Jersey, he wanted to go hear Stan Kenton's band, which was really famous.
Mm-hmm.
And he knew about this guy, Charlie Parker. And they played first, and Stan Kenton played. But he missed Charlie Parker. But he got there on the last tune.
Okay.
And he said he was like 13 or something. He went with his dad, and it was at Radio City Music Hall.
Mm-hmm.
And they wouldn't let him in because the concert was still going on.
Right.
But the doorman was nice. He said, okay, kid, you can stand over here. And he went just inside the door and heard the last tune of Charlie Parker's set. And that was it.
So, John, could I get you to play something on
What
the
the
guitar?
hell? I don't know. I don't think so, Rick. All this talking makes you, the more you talk, the less you can play.
Okay, so what are you doing to improve your flat picking, like you said?
Well, you ever see George Benson, how he holds his pick like that?
Yes. I don't know how he does that.
He's a freak. He's so great. And
Yes.
there are all these young guys, and it turns out, not just young, pickers who do that. See, I've always held it kind of like this.
Yeah.
So I'm just like a little kid trying to learn how to hold my pick, It's a different sound too.
Yeah.
You go, want to show you about my pick. I've already gone into another thing here.
I love it.
But anyway, yeah, I'm working on that.
So, John, the dynamics in your lines, though, between from every note has a different dynamic shape to it. And that's what creates the swing of it.
Yeah, I think so. That shading. And a lot of that is not picking every note.
Right.
And using the legato possibilities of the guitar.
And that's something that's always been part of your style, too, that legato sound.
Yeah.
It's a liquid sound or something.
That
I
came
love that.
From the blues guys, you know, because, Hendrix and Clapton, and the vocal quality of the guitar when you can, yeah.
But the dynamics, though, really create that the swing.
Right. Yeah, I don't know what that is. There's just something you have to be aware of, some swing stuff, and then you try to incorporate your playing. And I've got to say, trying to get some sort of swinging thing is like basically all I've done. And the more you listen to the music, you realize how important that is to have some swing.
Right.
Swing, and so working out the different ways to try and get the guitar to speak like that.
If I were to say, John, what's the best thing for somebody to practice that wants to learn how to play changes?
Just practice tunes, learn the tune, really learn the tune. Like what was I playing before? A blues, right?
Yeah.
You just really learn the progression. It's a 12-bar blues. And we'll keep the groove going. Now. One finger. So, I can hear it in my head, for better or for worse. One finger.
Yeah.
It's learn to play by ear.
Yeah.
And
I can hear all
lines. That's what you got to practice.
Right.
The lines,
I can hear all the changes. I can hear all the sub changes that you're playing, everything.
Yeah, and that's what the great jazz players could do, that linear, Charlie Parker, you can hear it all. It sounds like music by itself.
That's right. Take the instruments away and you know exactly what the changes are.
Yeah, the really good horn players. And I always listen to the horn players and stuff,
What's one of your favorite solos by someone else?
By someone else?
Yeah.
Miles,
What, though? Give me an example.
Okay, if you want to hear some Miles, there's so much.
Yeah.
Let me think of one.
What do you think of like Olio, for example, his solo on Olio?
Fantastic. Yeah, that's a really great one. I would say his studio recording of No Blues. See, I like those blues progressions, but let's go with that, which is the same song that Wes played.
Yes. That's
and
right.
It came from a Miles. But Wes was covering Miles Davis when he made his classic
He was playing
solo.
with Miles. It was Wynton and Jimmy Cobb and Paul Chambers.
Yeah, it was Miles's rhythm section. I think when the Wes got the Wynton Kelly trio with him, and that was really some of Wes's peak stuff. Yeah. And don't forget, everybody, before Wes came to New York, when he was already in his 20s and 30s, he had a family with a bunch of kids and a day job, and still learned to play the guitar like that.
Right. So what is there left to do, John, that you like? Are there certain types of records that you want to do?
Mainly, I'm just trying to play good, and if I can play
John,
good,
you've been playing good for decades.
Yeah, but you know what? It goes away really quick. And I'll have a good night and then I'll feel good about myself. And I'll have a bad night and then I have to just have another good night because I just want to give up, So that's just the nature of this life, I guess. And I think most of the musicians I know are like that.
This has been a fascinating time talking to you.
Great talking to you, Rick.
I'd love to have you come back in the future and have a talk again. I mean, this is really fascinating and it's such a pleasure to hear you play in person like this.
Great.
So thank you so much.
Give you a little walkout music.
Bumper music there, right? Awesome. Is this one of your? Is this like a?
I have two of these
ones.
No, this is not a reissue.
Is this the original one that you got?
Two old Ibanez. One from '82. This was from '86.
Okay.
And I put voodoo pickups on this one.
So you got the one in 82.
That's the Sunburst one.
Yeah, and were you given that or something?
Yeah, I was on tour. Before I was playing with Miles, I was playing with Terumasa Hino, the Japanese trumpet player. And
you're playing your 335 back then?
I had my 335 with me, and back then I didn't know how to do neck adjustments. Right? I didn't trust myself to do it.
I see you got the thing out ready to.
I'm ready to do it at any moment now. But back then I didn't do it, and the neck had warped with climate change and all, or temperature change, and so I was over there, and it was kind of hard to play. And they gave me this brand new Ibanez guitar.
What timing?
It felt great. And it sounded really good. So I just kept playing it. I've been playing it ever since.
Isn't it a little bit smaller than the 335?
If you did the exact inches, it probably, I don't know. It might be a little bigger.
Is it?
Slightly, but it's very slight. It's just different, bigger in different places, I guess,
But you've been playing Ibanez a long time, like 40 years.
I have a million guitars at home. So I have Strats.
I've seen you play Strats and Tellys and stuff like that.
And I have, big jazz guitars. I have my 175 from when I went to Berkeley, and I have solid body guitars and a bunch of Ibanez guitars and George Benson guitars and all. Just end up playing these. I'm used to it, And
just out of curiosity, what gauge string do you use on that? Is that like a 12 or something?
One of my favorite Rick Beato things was where you guys played the light strings, and I'm still trying to figure that out.
So
it blew my mind.
Yeah,
how good it sounded. How the eights sounded good.
Yeah, so I play eights, and I shifted because. I always noticed that when I would work with these heavy bands that tuned way down to tighten up the mid-range, I put a distortion pedal on before that would basically high pass the guitar, take the low end out, and the amps would sound, the mid-range would be so much tighter.
Yeah.
And so I was interviewing this guy, Dave Friedman, that's an amp builder, and he said, well, heavier strings have bigger strings have more bass. And so you want to, he goes, you should make a video like that, because lighter strings actually sound better.
You blew my mind with that one. But I think also your attack has so much to do with how the string sounds. Like if I played eights, I would break the guitar.
That's not true, actually. You would get used to it.
Okay. Well, I would get used to it. Yeah. But if the first time I picked it up.
First time you'd break the strings.
Because we did a gig in Germany once. It was my band and John Abercrombie's band. And my guitar died. It was like the wiring, something totally messed up. So the roadie was going to take my guitar and fix it. So I said, well, I'll play Abercrombie's guitar. And he had some really light strings on there.
Okay.
And, the first thing, I just immediately, all the strings went off the bridge. But, so you get used to anything. And I do know what you mean about that.
BB and those guys played eights. They played really light gauge strings.
I know. But I'm playing sort of heavy strings now.
Yeah.
That's a 12, 16, 22, unwound.
Unwound. Oh my God. That's a real
32,
cable
42, there. 52. And I'm used to them. And,
oh my God!
You can bend it.
You can bend steel.
That's the B string. I couldn't do. I can't get that up to that on the.
Okay, so that doesn't hurt your hands at all.
A little bit.
Wow.
Out of tune. But so these are heavy strings for that.
Yeah.
But I can still bend strings, and then I can pretty even, right?
Now, did you customize that set though?
Yeah.
Did you kind of say, okay, I need to have
I experiment, and on a Telly or a Strat, I would use 10s. I would not. Yeah, it's something about if I had 10s on here, it feels real slippery. But on a Telly, if I had these kind of strings, it would be unplayable. I think.
Yeah. I noticed you play differently when you play your Telly on the videos I've seen.
Yeah.
You have I think that these guitars really.
Yeah, you got to play them a little differently.
Yeah.
I love the Telecaster. Yeah.
That guitar sounds beautiful. All the voicings and everything like that sound beautiful on that with that.
And it's because it works for me, so I just keep it,
Yeah.
And I'm so used to it.
And you actually do your own truss rod adjustments. That's why the thing is off there.
Yeah.
That is hilarious.
Yeah. And you know what Pat Martino told me?
What's that?
He said he hasn't touched his bridge in like 10 years. He only does, whenever it's too low or too high, he just does that, which works,
Yeah. And he'd use pretty heavy strings too, right?
This guy, Pat, you could not play.
Did he play
guitar.
13s or something, or
No, he played 15s.
What?
Or something. Well, I'm told that Wes played 14s, right? That's what the jazz guys talk about. You're a pussy unless you play 14s,
right?
So that's another world completely. But Pat Martino played the heaviest strings you could probably even get, or and
he was using those mind picks, and I remember back with the ceramic picks or whatever, the stone
and
picks.
he just played so. I mean, there was so much power in those hands. And he told me I have to play. Remember, he had a low voice.
Yeah,
he said I have to play a bass amp or a regular amp. I'll destroy. And I think it was true.
Well, this is the same thing that the heavier strings have more bottom end.
Yeah, right.
Right. It's that same principle.
But when you have a 15 on top, it never gets clinky.
No.
If you can possibly press it down enough to get a note.
Right.
But and that's
would Pat have low action on his guitars? I know you guys played together and stuff. Did you ever sit and try and play his guitar?
Yeah, I just couldn't play it because the strings were so heavy. I was just like immediately, oh, thanks, Pat.
Man.
And what a giant. Yeah.
Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah. Oh yeah. He was really nice to me. I went to take a guitar lesson from him when I was, a Berkeley student. Went down to South Philly to his house.
Wow.
It was great. I just wanted to hear him bebop out. He wouldn't do that at all. He didn't even want to play. He just gave me concentric circles of all kinds of esoteric stuff, but it was great just to hang out with him. And he was so nice to me as I started to get gigs, and we would, a couple of times we got to spend time together, and very kind. And man, what a history.
Oh yeah.
I mean, he moved to Harlem when he was 15.
I know. It's unbelievable.
Playing with, first with Lloyd Price's big band with all those guys at the Apollo and stuff. And
I loved when Benson talked about going in and seeing him, like, who is this guy? And
I know. Yeah, he said, "Oh, I thought I was good." And those two, they came from the organ world, which I never did that. But in the early '70s when I was going to Berkeley, it was that scene existed a little bit.
Yeah.
It was almost gone, but it had been this fantastic thing where the clubs all over America, primarily African American audience and bands, and organ and guitar ruled, and that's what guys like Benson and Martino played all the time, and Wes too. And Wes, he had an organ,
yeah, Mel Ryan and Jimmy Smith,
Woo.
Amazing stuff. Love it, John.
All right, man,
fantastic.
Thanks so much, Rick. Yes. I really enjoyed this.
Were you guys recording that too?
Yes.
Oh, you guys are awesome. There's great stuff in there. Oh my God.
So now you can edit it down to it.
I'm gonna
get the key shit.
That was so cool.
Whatever I played that sucked, try and not use that.
Oh.
That was great. And now for our lead Bible player, Justin. Find your way back from the kitchen. Come on back to the studio.
Yeah, I'm back.
I got a lot out of that. That was a great interview. Rick Bieto, boys and girls. Let me put the link in for that thing. There you go.
Oh, you got it up.
Yeah.
Oh, well, this is something this is just a little bit of a lot of the studies I've done over I don't know what to call it, not necessarily calendars, but there's a lot of work I did that's just plainly not on here. I mean, there's just infinitely too much to put on a image, but this is just a little bit of a look at some of what's actually going on in regard to prophecy. So as I said before, that the snatching away is not something new. In fact, that it's actually, while it's a secret to a degree, but a lot of things are secrets, right? That is, mysterion, or, of course, by elements, closed keep. That is something that is kept closed. Of course, that doesn't fit our English idiom, but speak of a secret in English that way. You can see some of the work here that's been done, but
let me repeat that. So the word mysterion breaks down to our English as closed keep. Right. Like you keep it close to yourself.
Right, like Tyrion a keep, or as an accusative, um, for the noun. But if you were to verbify it, you'd be keeping, right? And
Yeah.
so, but you're a keep to call something a closed keep, and of course, it's most important first to look at the occurrences, not just the elements, and you'll be able to very well tell what's being spoken of. But in the same way, much damage has been done through false ideas that don't fit hardly any occurrences, but of course fit every occurrence. To say aeon is indeed the most easy word to translate, eon. But anyway, and of course it's adjective eon yin or eon yin. And so, but here I have a lot of work here. And so what you'll find is that the snatching away was taught in Daniel. And this has actually been highly missed. In fact, not only the snatching away. Have you noticed how a lot of times Jesus is speaking? It's like as if he's speaking like the Pharisees, are going to see the day of Yahweh.
Yeah.
They
I
are
have
going to
noticed.
see it, Ace.
I have noticed that.
Have you noticed the prophets themselves speak the same way about the people in their day, like in Isaiah and Jeremiah, and that they're going to see the day of Yahweh? Oh
Hmm.
my gosh, they are going to see the day of Yahweh. And it's taught that they're going to be resurrected to see the day of Yahweh. What's actually going on with the snatching away teaching, and with a lot of it is, for one, like the snatching away is very clear in as to what it's representing here. But a lot of it, like in Revelation, it's almost like they kept it a little bit under cover, because of course Revelation is somewhat of a unsealing of Daniel, right? And so but to have an unsealing of Daniel, certainly it also includes that which is already clear in Daniel, right? In fact, the part that is said to be sealed in Daniel seems to be in reference to a lot of the parts that, for example, which I'll be showing, that it identifies with not first, but foremost, resurrection is being identified with the that which Daniel says, happy are they who tarry and retain to the 1,335 days. But I'm going to show here what's going on. So in Daniel, of course, you have the last week of Daniel, right? That is the one that has not been fulfilled yet. And if anyone wants this, they can have it. Just give me an email. And so what I have, first of all, I went back and I fixed, because the original thing I made here, I had a lot of work that I hadn't added to it, like in regard to this, and that I just had mentally, but I hadn't actually added the work onto the chart. But I also fixed, because of the sloppy English translation of first day of the week,
Hmm.
by evening of the Sabbath, and I put some of those verses here that you can go look up some of them here, and you can see it appears in each gospel here. But it also some of what's happened is because people have mixed up some of the plural usage of this in other places, that they've made it almost to confuse people that it's okay to translate this as a singular here, but it's by looking at every occurrence, you'll find out that those articles that have done that have actually really obscured have intentionally obscured what's actually being said in the other passages to bend this. And by doing that, what I've done is I've also fixed what is going on here, because it actually ends up showing that he died on a Thursday, which would be I fixed the date here, because it actually also lined up better with the Nissan of 444, which how you would get to that is, I have a lot of it listed on here, but anyway, I want to talk mainly about the future week of Daniel. That's what really matters here. And so what we learn is that, of course, there's a man of lawlessness, right, which is typically what Christianity is already. And I mean false Christianity. I mean there is many antichrists among us who are saying that that there's a Christ who's coming, who's going to say he's God, he's going to sit in the temple of God, or of the placer, and say that he is the placer, right? well, we have many antichrists saying that Jesus did that very same thing, whereas Jesus came to reveal his placer and Father, and when he was in God's form, being he is the firstborn of all creation, he thought it robbery. Well, let's translate it accurately, because they've kind of really made it difficult to understand that not a robber, or not a like a theft, he deems that to be equal with God. Not a snatching, it's the same word as the snatching away, right? He did not deem it snatching, rather it's a noun there though. He did not deem it a snatch to be equal with God, rather, or Allah, that is, by element change, that but as in rather to switch it up. He didn't deem it to be equal with God, rather he empties himself, taking the form of a slave, coming to be in the likeness of humanity, and of course dying even the death of the state. So, but the Antichrist is going to do the opposite, right? He's going to glorify himself, and he's going to come and be about himself. Well, look at this. So the snatching away, what does Paul say in 2 Thessalonians, right?
You're breaking up a little bit. Can you hold your mic steady?
Right. Hey, how about now?
Or get closer to the Wi-Fi or something.
Yeah. Can you hear me better now?
Give it a try.
1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Is it good?
All right, we'll live with it, unless you can think of something to do.
Is it that bad?
I mean, I can hear, but like every fourth word is a little scratchy.
Let me see. Can I try refreshing?
Oh, Rick says it's clear on his end. Well, go ahead. And he left. And he's back.
Hello. Okay, let's bring it back up here. Okay, so the snatching away. What is the snatching away? I want to read you some of these passages, and I can't keep both on the screen here, but I will. Oh, you know what I actually can do? Oh, wait, yeah, I can. Okay, so what I'll do here is I'll go over here for a second, and we'll just, I know this isn't ideal, but we'll use this for right now, and I'll correct whatever needs correcting. Can you see both tabs? Yeah, if I switch back and forth. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So over here, we're told this. Now, let me just read from the top, because we know like a lot of people are very familiar with First Thessalonians, right? That he is our rescuer out of the coming indignation, right? Okay. You can see this, right? It's not glitching around.
It's good.
Okay. And of course, we learn over here, right, that if we're believing that Jesus died and rose, thus also those who are put to sleep and will God through Jesus lead together with him, right? And so, of course, we know when they are saying peace and safety, then sudden destruction comes upon them. And it talks about it like as if, like, why them? What about us? Well, let's see here. Okay, 2 Thessalonians. And I'm going to show you that this is in line with the teaching in Daniel. Okay, so first he has this greeting at the beginning, but let me kind of skip ahead to where we're talking about the same thing. A display of the so that we ourselves glory in the outcalls, or the ecclesias of God, for your endurance and faith and all the persecutions and the afflictions with which you are bearing. A display of the just judging of God. Oh, God's a just judge. Look at that. To deem you worthy of the kingdom of God, for which you are suffering also, if so be that it is just of God to repay affliction to those who are afflicting you. See, oh, interesting. But yet, those who are afflicting the Thessalonians, especially, are already dead. They're asleep, right? Well, we'll find out that they're going to be raised for the day of Yahweh. And to you who are being afflicted, ease with us And the at the unveiling, so he is with us at the unveiling of our Lord Jesus Christ, our Lord Jesus from heaven with his powerful messengers. Now, do we go to heaven when we die? Of course not. But we are going to get our ease in the day of the Lord Jesus Christ. In flaming fire, dealing out vengeance to those who are not acquainted with God, and those who are not obeying the evangel of our Lord Jesus Christ, who shall incur the justice of aeonian extermination from the face of the Lord and from the glory of his strength, whenever he may be coming to be glorified in his saints, and to be marveled in those who believe, seeing that our testimony among you was believed in that day. Or rather, this is say who believe in that day. This is connected, of course, to when we're being glorified with the saints, right? So you notice here that he's talking about it like they're going to get this, right? And of course, and then look down here. Now we're asking you, brethren, for the sake of the presence of our Lord Jesus Christ and our assembling to him, that you not be quickly shaken in mind, nor be alarmed, not either through spirit or through word or through epistle, as is through us, as the day of the Lord is present. I'm aware that the day of Christ is put here in the more late manuscripts, but either one, you'll get to the same conclusion here. So he's telling them here, right, that he wants them not to believe that the day of the Lord is present, right? It's not present. It's not instood, I believe is the word here. That is to say that it's not right now. And so don't confuse it with presence, as in like, then he's present, like, they're two different words, but it still kind of gets at the same idea that, well, depends on usage, right? But no one should be deluding you by any method, for should not, and of course, this is a topic of discussion, and I'm going to just translate it literally here, and we can make up our mind what kind of departure we're talking about, because it is by elements from stand, that is apostasis. But typically, I've noticed it, like I remember doing I study every occurrence in Greek history as to what exists of this word, because you can get like databases on like, what is it, Pursue or whatever, that website with a lot of the Greek stuff. Perseus, I don't know, but does seem that the noun was typically used of what is typically a look at a standing away in a mental like sense, but nevertheless, we're interested in what the scripture reveals about this word. And we only have the noun twice. We have that they're from standing, that they're teaching the apostles to from stand from the law of Moses, right? Or sorry, the apostles were teaching to from stand from the law of Moses and this one. But we also have the verb 15 times, and you'll find that I think like 12 or something out of 15 times that this is a physical departure in mind. And by knowing that in mind, that the idea of the definition of this word has nothing to do with whether it's spiritual or physical or anything of that matter. But what we should understand is this is a stand from, and I think it's a reference, first of all, to what he's talking about, or assembling to him. And the reason will become more clear in a second, because if we just translate it more literally, departure, let's read it that way. Look, so he says, don't, for the sake of the presence of our Lord Jesus Christ in our assembling to him, that you not be soon shaken in mind, nor be alarmed either through spirit or through word, or as through epistle, as through us, as that the day of the Lord is present. No one should be deluding you by any method, for if not, the departure be coming first, and the man of lawlessness be unveiled, the son of destruction. And this should be mentioned that this coming first is kind of also connected to the and here. So both of these are at the same time. Who is opposing and lifting up himself over everyone termed in a god or an object of veneration, so that he is seated in the temple of God, demonstrating that he, and notice, isn't this interesting that he says termed a god? Because we know that the word God means placer, right? I never even thought to point that out, that they're termed a god, right? But ultimately, it's kind of funny how he says it, right? Because ultimately, an object of veneration is not, that of course it says or, but they're termed a placer or an object of veneration, so that he is sitting in the temple of the placer, demonstrating that he himself is the placer. Do you not remember that when I was still being with you, I told you these things? Okay, so he told them about the day of the Lord, evidently, right? He told them some stuff that we know about in First Thessalonians as well, which you would imagine was in line with what he's talking about here, considering that he seemed to have the same topic in mind. And now, notice, and now this is, nin or nini. That is to say that we're not talking about the disjunctive, as in like that's the beginning of many sentences. You'll have there, which is just a semi-disjunctive. It's kind of like the equivalent of like how we might start a sentence with, like, I imagine this is the word there, for example. And so but often the word there gets translated now, but to say neni there is kind of like you're the disjunctive. It's not disjoining in the sense, but it's kind of continuing, maybe is the word in many cases, that you're continuing a thought. Where how in English class we were taught not to use and at the beginning of a sentence?
Yeah.
Well, they also don't really do that. They don't do that. They don't use ke at the beginning of a sentence, but to use de at the beginning of a sentence. Well, you don't use it at the beginning of a clause, interestingly, but it's technically at the beginning of a sentence, in as much as we would understand it. It's kind of because what you'll do is you'll put it later in the order of words, but it's still basically.
Scroll up a little bit.
Yeah. And so looking at this, though, what does he say here? That the day of the Lord, don't be deceived as if the day of the Lord is present. Why is the day of the Lord not present? Well, because the man of lawlessness isn't unveiled and the departure hasn't happened. Okay, that these are both must come first. Both of these are coming first is and here that is connecting both these ideas. Both of these, the son of destruction, the man of lawlessness, must be unveiled, and the departure must. Both be coming first before the day of the Lord. Okay, so why is the day of the Lord not here? Well, the departure hasn't happened, and the man of lawlessness is not unveiled. Now, this is, and of course, he's going to describe this departure multiple ways here, as well as that. Just look. Do you not remember that was when I was still being with you? I told you these things. And now you are aware. So now you are aware what is detaining. That is to say, the detainer. That's what is detaining. Well, look here. For him to be unveiled in his own air. What's detaining? Of course, what's detaining is the departure. That this comes first, and really this follows right after. That the departure in the man of lawlessness is unveiled. So why can't the man of sin? What is detaining the man of lawlessness from being unveiled? The departure hasn't happened. That's the idea, right? You see, the departure is what's detaining for him to be unveiled in his own air. That's why it's coming first. But I guess to say and, I'm aware that the word order here is that this is first, but it's kind of connecting as if this happens right away after and. But okay, so look at here. For the secret of lawlessness is already operating. Well, does this not remind you of a big religion that believes that someone came in his own name, demonstrating that he is God, revealing himself? Yeah. The secret of lawlessness is already, and it's a secret, it's a mysterion, is already operating. Only when the present detainer may be coming out of the mist, of course, this is what we're talking about. And to call it the present detainer, it's calling it as if it's a concept. That the departure, the present detainer, it's not saying that as if it's a people. The detainer must be coming out of the mist. And then
Okay, scroll up a little bit.
Scroll up.
Yeah, because verse 8 is getting in the way of the
Oh,
comment.
scroll down. Okay.
I'll scroll down. Okay.
Yeah, if you're, I think you're on Mac, so it does it the opposite direction. But when then will be, so notice the order here. Okay, first the departure, then the man. Look, first why is the day of the Lord not present? Is what he's telling you here. First the departure, then the mountain of lawlessness is unveiled. Okay, that's number one. And of course, he describes what he's like here, which brings us to the secret of lawlessness. So this is the first time he says it. Do you not remember when I was still being with you? I told you these things. We know what he said in First Thessalonians, which is likely in line with what he said in person. And now you're aware. So let's be aware again, since he already told them what is detaining. What is detaining? Well, that which comes first, the departure. And again, this is departure, most literally, which I'm identifying with this. And I think you're going to identify it easily once you see what he's actually talking about in Daniel. What is detaining? The departure for him to be unveiled in his own era. See, one comes first, then he's right of way unveiled. Detain, unveiled. Secret of lawlessness is already operating, which kind of reminds me of this, right? And also reminds me of there's many antichrists, right? Only when the present detainer may be coming out of the mist, here's the detainer up here. This is another time he's saying it, right? And the departure. Then will so he says it like 3 times here, right? And kind of maybe even more if you kind of break it down more. And so, and then of course, whom the Lord Jesus will dispatch with the spirit of his mouth and discard with the advent of his presence. And of course, he's going to have the operation of Satan with false miracles, signs, and powers, and and God sends them. God, the placer, is giving them an operation of deception. Yes, he is. And of course, God prefers us from the beginning in holy and set apartness of spirit and faith, and in the truth, not faith in anything, as many who will not be believing hardly anything true of the scriptures. Now, let's look at Daniel. So, first of all, let me show you what this looks like visually. Okay, this is the first half of the week on from this point. Does it make sure it's highlighting on the screen? Where's my tab? Uh-oh. Is it frozen? Oh, you can see it. You can see it. You can see the chart right now, right? It's moving. I'm moving
We're
it
back
around.
on the Sacred Scriptures, the Concordant version. Now we're on your chart.
What? You're on my chart right now, right?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So this is the start of the week. This is not when he's unveiled. He's unveiled as it plainly teaches in Revelation and Daniel in the middle of the week. And so you can actually figure out where all of this stuff is. That, for example, when's the abomination of desolation? Daniel is told. Daniel asks the question. Okay, so these 2 lines here, the purple line and the blue line here, and the purple and green text here, slightly green. I'm going to show you what these are in the yellow line. And these are going over here. And we're also going to learn something new about the second death, which I think is going to be much more proper to what's actually going on here. So let me just make clear first. This line right here, right here, where it says the days are discounted, right here, up, where you can see my mouse cursor, and then twinkling the eye, snatching away. All of this is the same thing. And this is the very middle of the week. And so the abomination of desolation, it's said to happen in the midst of the week, right, in Daniel 9:27. But we know exactly where in the midst, not that it doesn't end up being in the exact middle because of what Daniel is told later in the book. Now, I'm going to bring you to Daniel 12 here, and I'm going to show you that the snatching away is right there. And something else that's going to bring way more interesting stuff. Way more interesting thoughts about what the day of the Lord even is. Can you bring it up again? do you get to the other? You can see the book of Daniel here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. So, of course, there's a lot that's in here that has a lot of connection, but is this red text? I'll look at that later. So look at here. So over here, where this whole chapter here is a leading into Daniel 12. This chapter break is very sad, to say the least, because the whole thing here in Daniel 12 is lining up so greatly with Daniel 11 that it don't even make any sense unless you read Daniel 11 first. But what I'll just kind of break down here is we'll get a point here where we start talking about the one who's going to make the abomination of desolation. You see here? And the take away the continuous ritual and the setup of the abomination of desolation. And then we get from around here, we get a lot of information about this guy and some of the other stuff. And then what we're going to learn is when this abomination is set up, we'll learn when this happens, that it's 30 days before the middle of the week, and it's 30 days before the rapture, or what is typically called the rapture, the Latin word. Okay, look. In that era, so right after the abomination desolation is set up, but this is going to be around 30 days, and I'll show you why in a second here. I'm trying to zoom it in better, but it keeps doing this. Wait. Okay. In that era, Michael shall stand up, the great chief. So keep in mind, right here, we're like in the very middle of the week, if you study this out. In that era, Michael shall stand up, the great chief who is standing over the sons of your people, and an era of distress will come, such as not has occurred since there is a nation on earth until that era. Now, in that era, your people shall escape, all those found written in the scroll. Now, see this? Your people shall escape, all those found written in the scroll. From those sleeping the soil of the ground shall many awake, these to Ionian life, and these to reproaches. I should fix this here because this is actually plural. Reproaches for Ionian repulsion. Thus, the intelligent shall warn as the warning of the atmosphere, and those who are turning many to righteousness will be as the stars for the eon and further. Now, Daniel, stop up the words and seal the scroll until the era of the end. For many shall swerve as evil shall increase. And of course, this is a Septuagint variant, but it also, the Hebrew says knowledge, but you can go, this is also Septuagint variant. Daniel, well, I'll read it with the Septuagint variant here. I, Daniel, I see, and behold, two are standing, one near of the waterway and one of the far ridge of the waterway. And I said, so this is a big verse here. So we're in the middle of the week here. We're being taught about that people will wake up for Ionian life and for Ionian repulsion. And I saw the man. I said to the man in the water, clothed in linen, who is above the waters of the waterway. Here's a big question here. From the point of the resurrection, remember when Jesus says the parable of the fig tree, and a lot of preterists have made something crazy out of that, and that this generation shall not pass, right? Of course, this is utos, right? Or I guess in that place it would be toftos, but that is to say the same generation shall not pass, in which he's talking about. Well, Daniel asks the same, answers the question Jesus says there. He says, until when is the end of the marvels? So these marvelous things happening. When's the end of these marvels? Okay, so what is Jesus teaching when he says the parable of the fig tree? He's teaching that when is the end of these marvels? This generation shall not pass. How long is a generation? It's like 15 years, 10 years. This generation shall not pass. In fact, look how short it is. And I saw, I heard the man clothed in linen above the waters of the waterway. So he asked, when's the end of the marvels? Here, and this is a Septuagint variant here, but we can read it or not read it, we'll get to the same conclusion. I won't read it because I don't care for the Septuagint. Then he raised up his right hand and his left hand, and to the heavens, and swore by him who is living for the eon, that it is for an appointed time, 2 appointed times, and half an appointed time. So that's of course the 3.5, right? That's the if I can switch over here and it won't glitch. Can you see the chart right now? Can you see the chart?
Yes, I can.
Okay. So that's what the first answer here, he's telling, when will the end of these marvels be from the point of this resurrection right here? And notice here in this resurrection, which I'm going to read some stuff about up here, it's not only to Lyphionian, it's to everyone's going to be roused for the repulsion, the reproaches of repulsion Eonian. And what does that tell you about Olam too? Of course, what everything else tells you about Olam, that it's not eternal. In fact, he's going to tell them here that woke up to reproaches of repulsion for the day of Yahweh, that they can cleanse themselves in the day of Yahweh. These people who woke up to Eonian, so-called, that people have translated this eternal punishment or something in Daniel. I don't know what they translate in their usual translations there, but they've translated as eternal. Well, wait a minute. Part of the point of doing this is actually, how all the prophets say a third of Israel, in fact, and who knows how much of the rest will be saved in that day. Well, yeah, at least a third of Israel is going to be saved in that day, and that were woken up for Eonian repulsion. Again, this is reproaches, plural, should be plural here, of Eonian repulsion. They're woken up for repulsion olam, of the olam. And what does it say they're going to do? Many in the day of Yahweh shall purify and whiten themselves and be refined, yet the wicked shall act wickedly. So, you know how so many atheists have said, well, I want to see a sign. I want to see a sign. You're going to get your sign. You're going to wake up right here. And you may or may not, of course, according to the placer's will, it will be done. Purify yourself and white yourself. And why is there the former resurrection? The former resurrection is right here. Happy, in fact, it's also including the fact that even if you tarry, even if you're alive and remain in that resurrection, because can the flesh and blood tenant the kingdom of God? No, they cannot tenant the kingdom of God. But some will get many lashes, Jesus says. Some will get few lashes. I can send it to you, David. I made it. I didn't steal it anywhere. This is all my work, believe it or not. Many will get the lashes, but some will be cut in two when Revelation 19 happens. Some will be cut in two, fed to the birds, right? That's where it says one taken, one left. That is the people asking Luke of the same parable. Where, Lord? Where are they taken? Well, wherever the vultures are gathered, there the body will be. And of course, you see the same thing in Revelation 19, that the great feast of God Almighty is feeding the birds with their bodies. But some won't be overly wicked. They won't know. They might not know what they were supposed to do. That everyone was. That he was everyone's Lord in that day, and of course, as he is now. But they didn't know the will of his Lord, and maybe they got a few lashes, and this other did know the will, but was lazy about it, just screwed around and got many lashes. But the super wicked, are going to be cut in two, and that's where you can, unless you are born again, you cannot enter into the kingdom of God. Well, everyone's going to be begotten anew who wasn't cut in two, yet those who were begotten anew beforehand, those who were justified before that, will be woken up to Eonian life. And yet, it's the same thing here, that if they tarry and attains the 3,335 days, well, look here. Why even say that? Because what is the question going to be? It's going to be similar to the Thessalonians. Oh, shoot. Let me bring it up again. Sorry, it's glitching about it. My tabs are all. I need to put this on one screen and the other one on the other screen because I got two screens here for no reason, apparently. Otherwise, okay. If you look here, the yellow line I made here is the 335 days. Now, why is it asked? Why are they happy? Well, remember how he's unveiling some of the things which are sealed in Daniel, right? Not everything is sealed in Daniel. This is sealed, but of course this is not sealed. This is pretty plain that there's a resurrection to Eonian life. But these are kind of obscure, like happy is he who will tarry. Why is he happy? Well, look at here. What happens there? Why even have happiness? Well, because even whether they die or whether they tarry, there is a former resurrection, former in regard, of course, to what is being talked about, the 1,000-year, right? It's former, and why have it? So then you ask, well, if these are waking up to the day of Yahweh, that over and over again the prophets are saying that wouldn't it seem as if most who are in the second death have already died twice? Maybe some even thrice or 4 times? Well, look at this. Think about it. Why even call it the second death, considering even no matter what other form, not everyone died the same amount of times anyway. And oh my gosh, what is the first death? They were dead for the reign of Christ on earth here, right? So what do they ask? The first death, you know how Jesus says that they can kill your body, but they cannot kill your. Sorry, they can kill your body, but they cannot from whole loose. Not, it's a different word. They cannot from whole loose your soul, right? Why? Well, because your life and your soul is. Remember when he says, if you'll be losing your life, you'll be gaining it. Well, the life to gain is right here, right? Well, what is the first death? It's right here. They're dead here for the 1,000-year reign of Christ. That's what we're talking about. We're not talking about the first dying or something. And then why even say, remember when he says, so then now we got another death, that they're not yet reconciled. They're getting to die again. But what does John say afterward? Oh my God, there's not going to be any more deaths. There will not be a third death. There will not be a fourth death. So after this new heavens, new earth, whether it's plural eons or one eon or whatever, after this part plays out, there is no more death. See, there's the death of the eon to come. There's the death of the new heavens, new earth, and however many, whether one eon or multiple. But after this point, there will not be another death. You see what I'm saying? That there's only, even though some will be added to the second death on the new earth. For is it not said that there will be murderers outside of the gates? That they, and of course they are reigning, and yet he shall reign until he should be placing all his enemies under his feet. Oh, another funny thing, I was given a funny a Bible, I guess by Watchman Nee or something. My mom just got it for free at some hospital, and it had a bunch of notes, and he said it was satanic powers, of course, adding to scripture in 1 Corinthians 15. But isn't it all the more funny to really? I heard Jill say that once. Maybe he was copying him, but what's all the more funny is to think, wait a minute. So he's abolishing all satanic powers. So was Christ's power satanic? Because that's actually what's being more put into focus, that he shall be reigning until. So I guess he's abolishing, is Christ the satanic power? But I just thought that was funny to think about. But so what's the first death? 1,000 years. They're dead in 1,000 years. What's the second death? This, right? The lake of fire is the second death, first of all, of course, right? But this is in relation to what is being talked about, that they will not be in the new heaven, new earth. But yet there's murderers outside of the gates. There's the log of life, so that they can live for the eon, and how you would imagine, as it was said for the tree of life, that they will live a lot for the olam, right? That oh my gosh, they have to be cured. They have to go into the New Jerusalem so they don't die. They have to keep their robes white, otherwise they will be locked out, so they will be dying. They are not immortal. Of course, those who had purified themselves were immortal, but yet whether in the happy resurrection and expectation for those in the day of the Lord, right here at the beginning of 1,000 years for the former resurrection, or over here, which both of these are in his presence, right? We're not saying when you say those who are Christ in his presence, you're saying in his presence, right? That this is actually his presence, right? The day of the Lord is present from here to here, right? And so, of course, actually, this is not the same word present as present and presence. Actually, they're two different words, but they're not even the same Greek elements. But the point being, either way, in the Lord's presence, right? That the Lord is present from this point, and we learn further when this vivification happened. Well, here and here, form resurrection. Okay, so now look at this, right? So now if you think about this, right? What is, first of all, what is asked in Daniel over here? Okay, he wants to know when the end of these marvels are. These marvels. This is the question he asks here. This is what you need to focus on to understand these next timings. The marvels, all these crazy things happening. Well, first of all, the question is asked from the point of view of the resurrection. So the first thing he gets as an answer is from the point of view of the resurrection, which it was just told of, or the snatching away. There's an appointed time, there's two appointed times, and there's a half appointed time. Okay, so that's the 3.5. And this is labeled also as 360-day years as it is for the rest of the prophecies, but it's also labeled specifically as 360-day years when it's called 1,260 days in Revelation. It's also called 42 months in Revelation, and time times half a time, or era half, the same thing as here. Okay, and so it's labeled all those ways, and so that's when the Antichrist is revealed in Revelation, and that's where we also learn what comes first: the snatching and the departure, that are gathering to him. This is coming first, okay, and now it's clear who the Antichrist is. He's he's unveiled for who he really is, in a sense, as you're going to see. And of course, it's going to be evident to those who knew the word right beforehand, because he'll do the abomination desolation 30 days before. But he's unveiled in the sense that was talking about in Revelation, that suddenly, oh, shit hits the fan and it's bad, I guess. So what comes first? This, and then there's 360 days here from this point, from the resurrection to the end of the marvels.
Scroll down.
Okay. There's 360. Sorry, not 300. 1,260 days, as you see here. Time, half a time. That's the same thing as the 1,260 from in Revelation. It's labeled the same. It's labeled this way as well in Revelation, as well as 42 months. And that's when this will have its conclusion. And also, he gets another answer to the question. Look, as for me, I heard and I did not understand. And I said, my Lord, what will be after these things? And he replied, go, Daniel, the words are stopped up and sealed until the era of the end. Many shall purify and whiten themselves and be refined. Yet the wicked shall act wickedly, and none of the wicked shall understand. Yet the intelligent are understanding. So notice here that people are going to be saved in the day of Yahweh. You know how this reminds you of a lot of passages in Paul as well, and of a lot of the prophets, right? Like Romans 10 or something, right? Or Romans 11 as well. From from the era when so he gets another answer to his question in a different way here. From the era when the continuous ritual is taken away, which we learn this is identified with the abomination desolation. So here I just showed it earlier. Okay, here you can see the take away the continuous ritual and the abomination desolation, which of course is identified with the last week of Daniel here, which is identified with the. Of course, this is, you could put italics to this, but you're talking about the coming one, the governor, the coming one, which is in contrast to the Messiah, the governor. But you have the governor, and of course, keep in mind Hebrew verbs and how they work. That you say coming one from the Messiah, the governor, is the contrast, of course. As to say, it's future from the Messiah. It's coming. And so from this point of the abomination desolation and the continuous ritual taken away, and in fact, look, it says right here as well, taken away, and this is 1,290 days. So now you have that on the chart here as well. This, see? And that's how you know that this great suffering or great tribulation or whatever is identified with the saints in regard to this part, the 30 days. Because what is Jesus? Jesus says, when this happens, you know, if you're in Judea, not that everyone will be, flee to the mountains, you know, but that then shall be great. Then, at that point, shall be great suffering, and that, you know, that. And then and he says, if those days wouldn't be discounted, no flesh at all would be saved. Yet, because of the chosen, those days shall be being discounted. And so here's the discounting, the rapture, the snatching away. And you can see some of the other, of course, it's put in different ways, and some of it's more clear than others. But of course, look, here's the Daniel, right? They shall escape. Your people shall escape. And then, of course, the resurrection as it's written. And I asked why. And I point some of that out here. If anyone wants to screenshot this, it might be worthwhile. I said, many will awake here to face the day of Yahweh, and also called in the New Testament as the day of the Lord. I believe it is indeed everyone. Likely other verses can be found to show that, and I'm sure you find a lot of verses. I just don't list any here. I mean, I can think of a bunch. But anyway, that if you are dead, you do not awake to, and if you are dead and you do not awake to Eonian life through the vivification in Christ, you awake to reproaches, that is plural, of repulsion Eonian. This is said plainly in Daniel 12. Also recommend reading the full chapter before Daniel 11 to understand its timing and reference point. This also explains why the dead shall not live until the 1,000 years are finished. You know how where it says the last day, for example, right? The resurrection in the last day, this is that resurrection. Let me show you that. Because he's identifying it with this, that the end of the days. It's just being shortened to last day, which the end of the days here is being identified with, look, now you go on to the end and you shall rest, right? You're asleep. You're not in heaven. You're asleep. You, not your body, you, the person, shall rest and stand up. Well, we know what anastasis is, upstand. You shall upstand, you shall stand up for your lot at the end of the days. So he's going to stand, of course, his lot is the standing up here, is being identified with that in this passage. And so that's actually where? It's right here. And so that is the resurrection in the last day, how people have misconstrued that. I mean, he's identifying it with this phrase, the end of the days. The last day is the end of the days, which is why it's the resurrection in the last day. Okay, look. For the reason that this is also, there shall be a resurrection of the just and of the unjust. This is that resurrection, this one. And this one is what's being talked about in that point. This explains also why the rest of the dead do not live until the 1,000 years are finished. And let me point out why I'm pointing this out. Because it seems contrary to say that, because all the rest of the prophets seem to say they will live in the king, or that they will face the day of Yahweh, or that some will be raised at the same time. Because the former resurrection is actually this. Happy are they, this. Not, well, it's also bringing in those who tarry here, but that the fact that you attain to that is that they will be purified. If they are purified in the day of Yahweh, they will attain to the former resurrection. In other words, why even call it former, Ace? Because they're still going to be, notice what Revelation says. Because they're still going to be there. Even if, what is their worry going to be, right? That if they're going to be faithful and die for Christ, that they're not going to be there. Because the resurrection already happened. A resurrection already happened, but why? What's their worry? Of course, their worry is that they're not going to be here, right? But why say that? Well, because this is a former resurrection. This is a former resurrection, right? Because they're not getting left behind just because who are we talking about here? Look, I perceive thrones and them that seated on them, and judgment was granted to them, and the souls of them executed. Executed. See that? In the day of Yahweh, which was talked about here. Look, the ones executed we're talking about now. Because of the testimony of Jesus and because of the word of God, and they didn't worship the beast. Sorry, those who do not worship the beast and its image, and do not get the emblem on their forehead and on their hand, they live, they also, and of course you could also say, and but of course I think this is the idea indeed, that they also live and reign with Christ 1,000 years. The rest of the dead do not live till the 1,000 years are finished. This is the former resurrection. So to point it out as former is important. Why? Well, because a resurrection happened 3.5 years before this. And what are those who wake to the day of Yahweh and purify themselves in the day of Yahweh, that they were not set? You know how today is a day of salvation? There's plenty of days of salvation. Here's a day of salvation for a third of Israel. Who knows how many of others? A third of all Israel who's ever been unbelieving. This is a third of Israel in regard to who? In regard to those who are going to face the day of Yahweh. See? A third, and we're not talking about just those who are alive and remain. Look. Let's see here. Oops, that's... Okay. See how this is all from this point. First, the snatching away. First, the departure, the assembling to us. And then Daniel wants to know what's the end of these marvels. How long is it going to be? Well, from the resurrection, it's a time times half a time. This is exactly what we find in Revelation. And from the abomination of desolation, this is exactly what we find elsewhere, that there will be a period after the abomination of desolation. Even though it's in the midst of the week, it's not in the very midst of the week. As we learn that it's 30 days before, because you just do the math, that if there's 1,290 here, well, you go back and you'll find the math here, right? That from this point to this point is 30 days, that there's 30 days in between here and here. And okay, and that many shall purify themselves in that day. So why have a former resurrection? Because many will purify themselves in that day. But also, what's another concern going to be? What if I make it to the end of the week and don't you want to be vivified? Well, happy are they who do tarry. They're also going to, if they're alive and remain. But also other questions are going to get brought up, like, and Jesus is going to answer some of these questions. For example, and Paul as well, flesh and blood cannot tenant the kingdom of God, but yet flesh and blood can enter into the kingdom of God. So what's going on here? So those who are entering into the kingdom of God alone have to be begotten anew at that point. But when will they be begotten anew? Not that no one's begotten anew before that. If they were, then what happens? They are tenants. But let me show you here. Of course, it says enter in John, but let me show you a good example here. Look at here. So this is all in the day of the Lord, but you can apply it principally to probably more than that. And the Lord said, consequently, who is that faithful who consequently is the faithful and prudent administrator who the Lord will be placing over his attendants and be giving him the measure of grain in season?
God bless you.
Thank you. Happy is that slave whom the Lord coming will be finding doing this. And notice this is the same as what you'll find in Matthew 24 at the end of that. Because this is Matthew 24, the latter portion I'm saying, that is the portion that is in regard to in the day of Yahweh, not the portion that's in regard to before the day of Yahweh, which is a big portion of that. Truly, I am saying to you that anything that's before is before the snatching. And the day of Yahweh is present when that happens and the man of lawlessness is unveiled, the son of destruction. Truly, I am saying to you that he will be placing him over all his possessions. Now, if that slave shall be saying in his heart, my Lord is delaying his coming. Remember the parable of the fig tree? This generation shall not pass. This, and Daniel asks, when's the end of these marvels? Well, it's only 3.5 years, Daniel. This generation won't pass. And should be beginning to beat the boys and maidens, and should be eating and drinking to be drunk. The Lord of that slave will be arriving on a day he is not hoping, and an hour he does not know, and shall be cutting him asunder and appointing his part with the unfaithful. So that's death, right? This is someone who is not, first of all, if he comes and he does this, then I guess it's not even relevant to a degree. But if someone were to die, in other words, because that would happen, around this area. This area, but I guess there would still be 75 days between that and the happy expectation. But either way, the point is that this one is cut in two. Now, okay. Now he who does not know, so someone who doesn't know what's going on, he's there, he don't really know what's going on, yet does things deserving of blows, he shall be beaten with few lashes. So if someone doesn't really know what's going on, yeah, he does things deserving of blows, he'll get few lashes, but he's not going to be killed. He's not going to tenant the kingdom. He's not going to have everything faithfully committed to him, which to tenant, you must be vivified, which is that have the expectation. But they will be mortal in the kingdom. They will receive few lashes, and they will enter, and they will be begotten anew. They will receive it. That is received, not the false idea Christianity has applied to that. That is, that will receive in the same way you receive a ball to the head, that, or like how they say you're going to receive hell. It's not up to them. It's not of him who is willing, nor of him who is racing, nor is it one being born of blood, nor of the will of man, nor of the will of the flesh, but of God. It's God's work. Now, to everyone to whom much is given, from him much will be sought. And to whom they are much committed, more excessively will they be requesting of him. Okay. This isn't actually even the one I was looking for, but there's more just like it. You'll see, in fact, let me read up. Oh, look at here. Happy is the slave who the Lord will, oh yeah, this one, and then what you'll find is this also connects to other things that are said all over the place, like okay, look at this. At the end of Matthew 24, and this part, this immediately after the tribulation, so the affliction of those days, son, this is the snatching timing. It doesn't make it clear here exactly what's going on, but I'll show you that this is the same thing. First of all, you got to be a little careful when you read it. Read it carefully. because sometimes there is ellipses that that happen, but just like in 1 Corinthians 15 and other things. But look here, but they will be clear when you read them carefully and not just out of context. So, of course, the great affliction happens when this happens, the abomination, desolation. And then, so if you're in Judea, you better flee the mountains, blah, blah, blah. Okay. And except those days be discounted, no flesh at all will be saved. Well, here's the discounting, the snatching away. Here's the discounting, the resurrect, that they shall escape, it says in Daniel. And how shall they escape? Well, Aeonian life, they'll be escaping. They will be resurrected and snatched. Okay. And then, of course, and then there's more that will apply to the latter portion, which is the day of the Lord. And so when you see here that some will be cut asunder when in Revelation 19 timing area, some didn't know any better. They might, they might get lashed, blah, blah, blah. I don't know if it brings in the lashes part here, but it does. The one taken, one left is in relation to how Luke says that where, Lord, they're asked, and he says, wherever the body is, wherever the vulture is gathered, the body will be, or whatever. And so that's Revelation 19. It says that there will be a feast of the birds. And over here, these parables, what's going on? Okay, well, this one, you'll find that they all had their thing or whatever, the oil, they all slept rather, but some of them didn't get their oil, and then they're locked out of the kingdom, or they're locked into outer darkness. This is not death, but they're locked out, right? The weeping, gnashing of teeth seems to be related to this. This one as well, that outer darkness seems to be they're locked out of the not New Jerusalem here actually, but they're locked out of the kingdom. But this would be almost an equivalent of being locked out of the New Jerusalem and the new earth, right? But of course, this is not the new earth being talked about here. But they're locked out, right? Outside. And then this, why chastening Aeonian? Because they're actually being chastened. Well, first of all, it's not a verb, I'm aware, but that it's a chasten, that this is not that they're dead here. This is in connection to many, some will get few lashes, some will get many lashes. And of course, keep in mind, this is a parable. Don't overtake, this, that, the other thing, that fire Aeonian, blah, blah, blah. But the fire Aeonian is being represented by what he's talking about, just as much as they're not actually sheep and goats here, right? So, but what do we learn about this? That there's going to be a chastening Aeonian and a life Aeonian. There's also going to be some won't even get the chastening Aeonian. They'll just die. They'll be cut in two. That's the even worse part. So if they're begotten anew, they'll get the they will be begotten anew. Sorry, not begotten anew at the point, but that will make them begotten anew to enter into the kingdom, and they'll get chastening because they're still mortal. Okay, this all is in the same stuff. Look, and how it says right over there, it said, when does this happen? When the sun is darkened, the moon will not give her light. That's when it identifies this as the snatching away, as with the angels, coming down and whatnot, and immediately after the days of the affliction. Well, look here. When does the affliction come in Revelation? You'll find that it comes right here, in the end of the end of Revelation 6. Even though it might appear, that when he's opening the seals, what we actually learn is that the affliction starts here. And so what happens? So this is when they see the face of the lambkin, and his presence is now here. He might have been opening the seals before, but now his presence here. Fall on us, blah, blah, blah. And so this is the middle of the week, as we'll learn elsewhere. And that's the rest of this from this point is the middle of the week. Is the latter portion of the week. And that's why you'll see, does it type it this way, or does it type 1,000? So you see it like this, right? This is what Daniel asks, right? He asks, when's the end of these marvels? Well, this is from the point of the middle of the week. This is how long the Antichrist will have his say, as well as not necessarily say, but this is the Antichrist and the presence of the Lord are being put, that the presence of the Lord, the Antichrist comes up, right? Or sorry, the day of the Lord, rather, the presence of the day of the Lord, and also the presence of the Lord, actually. And of course, it's going to be written as 42. How do you spell 40? 42 months. 42 months, a couple times here. You know, and the days and the time, or what's eras. What is it right here? Season, probably. Yeah. Seasons, half a season, all the same amount of time here. And so this is, you'd identify with this kind of phrase with what's being said in Daniel, that times, and appointed time, or appointed time, appointed times, and appointed half a time.
All right, sum it up for us, Justin. Give us the main takeaways from this whole presentation.
Well, if I want to give you any main takeaway, I don't know. There's a lot, but first of all, let me put my email in the side chat so I can send this to whoever wants it. It also has stuff on, like I said, the other prophecy. It also has stuff with, I'm not into like date setting or anything like that, but I also do have something, an interesting note here, but it wouldn't be any date that anyone would be happy to hear about. But it's I didn't actually give a date here, but I was pointing out that this prophecy was fulfilled a certain way, and you'd wonder if this one in Ezekiel would have something to say about a future when the day of the Lord will happen. And someone wanted to just screenshot this part, but they might not understand what I'm talking about. I'd have to probably explain some of that. But, well, if anything's cool to think about, notice that in Revelation, just to give a different thought, in Revelation, how it says there will be no more death, right? And yet there's murderers. Isn't it cool to think that there won't be another death, because its death will not be still, or like further. It's kind of like this is how it translates olam ad. Typically in the Old Testament, they translate it eon and still, right? Or not always, but sometimes that was like, well, first of all, there's a lot of different ways to translate it because there's a lot of different Septuagints. But that's one of the variant readings that will be coming up, because multiple different people were translating the Old Testament. Of course, it's not one Septuagint. But to say and still, like that death will not be and still, as to say death will not be further, is I think the point he's making is that you have the first death, which is here. You have the second death, but oh my God, you don't. If there's no more death still, the next one is going to be what? Just read it for me.
The next one is going to be what?
Oh, I'm saying the next, being that there won't be any more death, what's the next resurrection that's not being talked about in Revelation, but somewhere else, maybe in Paul's epistles, I don't know, or even as an animal or dying, the souls in Christ shall all be vivified. The finish, whenever he should be giving up the kingdom to his God and Father, whenever she should be, making according to unaction all sovereignty, authority, and power. For it is binding for him to be reigning until he should be placing all his enemies under his feet. The last enemy is being abolished, is death. That is to say that the last enemy is being identified with death. They're both nominated for that reason. For he subjects all under his feet. Now it is evident that whenever all is subject, it is outside of him who subjects all to him. Now, whenever all may be subject to him, then the Son himself also shall be subject to him who subject all to him, that God may be all in all. So will there be no more death? Why is there no more? That what he's telling you is that there's not any more resurrection. There's not any more death, right? That yes, there will be murders. There will be more added to the second death on the new earth, as it's plainly shown. But there's only the first death and the second death to be worried about. There will not be a third death to be worried about. So what comes after the second death? This, that there's no more judgment, resurrections. There's no more judgment. John, you got to keep in mind, John already knows the salvation of all, just as the rest of them knew it from the beginning. He is a propitiation for our sins, not for ours only, but the sins of the whole world. No one would have, and I've also pointed this out, that, I think many those people who are opposers were believed the salvation of all. Of course, most of them of course, most of them did. Of course, they had Eonian as what they had to do with work with. The only reason people don't believe that God's the Savior of all nowadays, well, first of all, it must be so because God has God has said that they shall wax worse, and yet if it was written, it must be, so they have to be that way, that he's made these vessels that way. But also by nature, why is this happening? What methods is God using? Well, corrupt the scriptures, make them be reading eternal for a word that Jesus and all scriptures over and over tell you is not endless time. It is not endless time, but a durated time with an end. And so when he says there will be no more death, what do you learn from that? You don't learn that there'll be no more life. You learn that there's no more death. This is the last death we have to deal with. You see that?
Yeah.
No more, thank God, because that's how we can know that that's ultimately the last, what you would say, like, if you have that, there's no more, we don't have to worry about another third death. You see what I'm saying is that there's no more third death, fourth death. This is the last death that needs to be worried about. And it shall be being abolished, made according to an action, right? By elements. Just as all sovereignty, authority, and power, and Christ's sovereignty and authority and power is being abolished. So I don't want to hear all satanic authority and power. What are you talking about? All authority and power, all sovereignty, authority, and power. Christ himself, authority and power, is the main focus there that's being abolished. Just as much all the rest. It's a lot of excitement.
Yeah.
But what's really cool to learn of, like, if you had to have a takeaway of that, besides, is, I think, to realize that how cool it is that like, they're going to awake. I mean, as awful, but they're going to be able to purify it. So like someone like Wildheart, technically, he wants proof, right? He's going to be able to have his 3.5 years of proof, and he can purify himself then. Of course, it's all up to God who he makes just and unjust, right? But in the scheme of things, let's see if you really just wanted proof. It's kind of like God saying that, right? Oh, you wanted proof, huh? Let's see how much proof I can give you. 3 years of it, 3.5 years of it. You see that? Isn't that cool?
Yeah.
I just think it's so cool.
Yeah.
But you know what I said earlier, that I had never heard anyone say anything like this. Like, but to realize that, like, the one who's doing just is just. So for me to act like, oh, you knew all this, you know, well, I mean, you ought to most certainly know that Christ actually died. You ought to not be believing that God is three. But I mean, look, like, who could fault Knock? Who could fault Coram? Who could fault Zender? Shame on me for even. I mean, not shame on me, because I was trying to do with what I understood, but I just realized more, like, if the one who's doing just is just, Zender is doing just. He's not teaching me that God is three. He's not teaching me that Christ didn't die. It was only his body. Did not Jesus Christ having come in, is that not true that he's having come in flesh? If his body dies, he dies. Oh man. I love you, Ace.
What a fine way to wind it up. There you go. That's a good summation of the whole thing.
Yeah.
I love you too, buddy.
Thank you.
You're a good egg.
By the grace of God, I am what I am. How else? I mean, seriously, like, more and more I understand. I die daily. I'm dying daily. I'm dying. Like there's nothing. There's nothing to hold on to anymore. Like it's just, what I'm holding on to is I die daily. That's what I'm holding on to. Because you wake up and when I was an unbelieving person, a Christian, it was about. I mean, yeah, there was a lot of Bible study, but it wasn't the same. It was not I'm die daily. It was not. There's no, that to think I don't. There's nothing to have. There's nothing to chase after in like such a sense that I am dying, that like that's what's I'd like to die to yourself, to go out of your way to love others, to die a day, like you know what dying and to be, and they can't understand. If they can't understand what literal death is, how can they understand to die daily? That don't make any sense. But to be dying, like when you're think of it, like I mean, you probably understand it way better than I do. Being I'm only 28, but like to die daily, like that. There's no reason to go set out on what does James say, that I'm gonna go do this and I'm gonna go do that, and what you ought to say is, if the Lord's willing, I'll go do this and that, and that's what's going to happen. What's the Lord's willing is going to happen, and there's no, the rest of it's just empty, vain, prattle. I don't need anything. I don't need anything. I don't. All I want to do is be faithful, and that's what else do I got, And what do I have that I haven't obtained anyway? What unfaithfulness do you have, or do I have that we haven't obtained? What faithfulness? What have we that we haven't obtained from God? Do-do-do-do-do-do-do. I love you all, even those who hate me. Definitely, even those, but especially those who are believing.
There you go, boys and girls. There's the after show link. And feel free to come in and hang out for a bit. Nice to see you, Joe. Joe says it's a long journey ahead for you. Sweet.
If the Lord is willing, I am living. Yes.
Thanks for stopping by. Give me a thumbs up and, and share this good news with somebody that
It's autistic.
there's no third death. There's just a second death. And even if there was a third death, death is still not a problem because God kills and makes alive. And he's going to abolish death. And the rule, it's important that we understand that the rule of Christ is going to be undone as well, because if Christ has to rule over somebody throughout eternity, that doesn't speak well of his great ability to bring them to the point where they don't need rule because God is all in them.
And remember what we talked about with Hebrew El and Eloah and Elohim and Elohim, like the fact that it's all about being toward God.
Yeah.
That subjection and being toward is the same thing.
Let me tell you about just an analogy about toward.
Yeah.
John 1 says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was toward God.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, as an analogy, we can just imagine that Christ always has his eye on God, right? Because he wants to please the Father. And
That's exactly the idea.
yeah, and I have a son right now. He's 17, and man, he keeps his eye on me, and always has. Even when he was 3 years old, he did something. He misbehaved in some way. I raised my voice at him and made him stand in the corner. He was so wounded that he had offended me. It didn't, he didn't care about the punishment. He cared about that he had offended me. His whole view is toward me. And in that day when God is all in all of us, we will all be towards God. We will just be looking toward him because he will be our desire. We won't be full of ourselves in that day. We'll be full of him.
Amen.
Thanks for stopping by. Share these ideas with somebody. And Joe, I'm glad that you keep bringing up Carl Barth. He's a good egg. Hit the StreamYard link and come in if you want. Bye for now.